All right, then it's excuse me, my voice is hoarse. I got a little cold, but it's December 31st, 2022, last day of 2022, and here is Joshua Rodriguez, who is the presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. Uh, Good evening, sir.
Yes, sir.
So so
Good evening.
how you doing, sir? So um 2024, now we entered in 2023 in the next few hours. What would Tell us about yourself? Tell me about um, the ideas that like you want to achieve should you become the nominee for the Libertarian Party and also at the White House.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. Yep, my name is Joshua Rodriguez. I'm a candidate for president. I'm running with under the Libertarian Party. You can find a little bit more about me at Joshua for Unity, Joshua FOR for Unity.com. And yeah, check out my platform. Check out the Libertarian platform. Um, a lot of the values that I have, are built in based on how I was raised. I was raised Christian. Uh, Went to college, undergraduate degree in biochemistry, graduate school in chemistry, a lot of community work. When Parkland shooting happened in 2018, I was participated in the Jefferson County School Safety Task Force. And so I worked with Columbine survivors, mental health professionals, law enforcement, and we examined every aspect of school safety. And so the moment I started participating in those types of activities, I just kept going. My city had a land development code update, and so I was on that committee, and so I understand like zoning and affordable housing issues, those sorts of things. And when
Okay.
2020 hit, and everyone was shutting down, I participated in Jefferson County Food Security Task Force, and so that task force created the first ever 211. You call 211, you could find free food now near you 24/7. Nonprofit operator for 5 years now, benefiting at-risk youth. Ran for mayor 2018 and ran for United States Senate in 2020. And so I'm excited about the new year and the year to come. And I appreciate you having me for sure.
All right. So what state are you? What state are you originally from? Are you from Colorado? Are you? Because you mentioned a lot of cities.
Colorado, yeah.
Yeah, Colorado. Okay, you're from
Yeah,
state Colorado.
Colorado.
Um, Colorado is an interesting state. Is that more of because I know it's places like Colorado, um, Vermont, New Hampshire. They're mostly libertarian state. Would you agree? That's where most libertarian have the more success, or there's more or population. Is that more um, libertarian minded individuals? Would you agree with that, or is that just where y'all stronghold
Yeah,
at?
yeah. The birthplace of the Libertarian Party was in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And
Oh, okay.
so and it's largely independent. You 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 independent. And so the independent party is just growing and growing and growing. And I think a lot of Gen Zs are probably heading towards independent. They're not choosing a party. And so when you look at 2024 and presidential candidates, it's an
Hmm.
exciting time. There's a great possibility that I could be nominated and become president in 2024, and that's the hope, and that's why I'm running for president.
Okay. Now, on your campaign page, uh, that you said something that um, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'm at the wrong page. Let me go to your platform part of your website, and
Sure.
it says though you are I forgot where it said that you said something that like you was in science. You was a scientist at one point, or you was
Yeah,
into science. So
I
what? So
do a
what
lot of
science?
I do consulting, and so one of my first jobs was working with Mitsubishi Gas Chemical, doing chemical manufacturing, and another job I was working for the Army as a civilian research scientist, destroying chemical weapons. And so I worked with quantum computers. So I'm an expert in cryogenic science and chemical engineering, those sorts of things. Process engineering is something that I enjoy as a part of my my tasks that I do with consulting. And so worked in pharmaceuticals, those sorts of things. So science is built into me, and it's something that when you think about issues related to curing HIV, one of the promises that I'm going to make right now is first 100 days, I'm going to cure HIV, those sorts of things. And so those are my motivations, that we can cure cancer in the United States and we can work with other countries to do it. We just have to really focus and kind of, do it together type thing. And so as a scientist, those are things I'm excited about.
Okay, I'm glad though, like you mentioned cancer, and because on one of your uh, on your website you said, well, you know what, I'll go there later, but you you said that the FDA is dragging its feet when it comes to cancer research, um, cancer and other elements. You saying it's dragging its feet. Can you explain on what it's doing, by what you mean by is dragging its feet?
Yeah, so when you look at the FDA in particular, it was born out of necessity. So you had companies that were putting dyes in food, and so those types of metals were actually causing people to die. And so when you look at pharmaceutical drugs, when pregnant women had the opportunity to have nausea medication in the 1950s, and there was birth defects. So a lot
Hmm.
of what's going on with the FDA was born out of necessity. But when you look at the FDA now, it's really just political. And so big companies right now are just basically using it to wean out competition, which is not fair. And there's a lot of these games within Congress that have these campaign kickbacks, right? Here's some campaign donations. Let's work together. And so FDA is just really unnecessary. It's just dragging its feet in a sense. Is It's all political based. And so when you look at opportunities to accelerate drug manufacturing and operations in food quality and those sorts of things, something simple as a food label that's meant to educate the public really is actually just a tool for companies to wean out smaller companies. And so in previous history, for example, there was a fish manufacturing company that they created a label per the FDA requirement, and the company didn't like that, and so they worked with the FDA, and then they made a mandatory updated label, and so basically the company went out of business, right, over something simple as a label. And so when you think about pharmaceutical drugs, the FDA has created guidance documents, but it's really just one-sided, viewpointed kind of ideas. It's like someone who is interested in microbiology saying, I want a stamp in history and I want something to do for a job. Let's research this microbiology topic, right? And so, oh, let's make it a mandate. And so it becomes unnecessary completely. And so when you start thinking about free market principles, the FDA is really hindering that right now.
Okay, because it's kind of like, I don't know. It's like what they did to the diabetic insulin, when they kept, what's that word that they, every time they try to, um like the price of insulin has skyrocketed, and I don't know, the patents, I think it had something to do with the patents or something like that. Do you think though that is part of the problem, is the patenting of medications that made the FDA more um corrupt, um when they try to um um roll out their guidelines? 'Cause I'm using
Yeah,
you know, I'm using about the
yeah. So when you
patent
think about a
issues.
smaller company, right?
Right.
when you think about a smaller company, they're trying to get into the market, and so that free market competition comes into play. Hey, there's a cheaper version. Well, the big companies are just going to come in and say, hey, let's make this a really strenuous process, right? And when you have campaign kickbacks and basically the FDA is controlled by the Congress,
Hmm.
what's going to happen? The smaller companies maybe never going to get their drug approved by the FDA, and so basically you have these bigger companies that control the market. And they're going to suck up as much money as possible, especially in the United States. Other countries, it's not that expensive; it's cheap. And so there's opportunities there to let companies go into the free market. You can even have something as simple as exemptions for smaller companies or even private sections of the FDA that allow private work with directly with smaller companies. The free market's important. Libertarian viewpoint is abolish the FDA. It's unnecessary.
Okay.
If we're going
Okay.
to have something similar to the FDA, have a task force. The FDA is not necessary anymore.
Okay. Okay. Because I kind of find tragic that you know, seeing people die of cancer. Um, and there's things like the blue scorpion that's in, the blue scorpion venom that was discovered in Cuba a few years ago that had diminishing effects on tumors. The venom, I think there's the blue scorpion, then there's the death stalker scorpion in the Middle East, primarily in Egypt and in uh, Yemen, and I'm just wondering why if we got all these anti cancer remedies, why is it the FDA and is preventing those things from becoming into the market? I think though that would save a lot of people's lives and a lot of people's money. Um, in
I
that
think you're correct. A lot of what the FDA is doing right now is viewpoint analysis. You're getting people that just have like a personal viewpoint. And so when you look at journals, medical journals, a lot of that research documentation never actually gets out into the public. It's basically being picked and chosen by an individual person, especially in the FDA. And so when you have guidance documents that have, hey, we have this recommendation, it's not two-sided, let's think about the pros and cons or even the economics associated with what happens when we're going to have this restriction. And so when you think about these ideas, they get hindered a lot of the times, especially with companies are like, oh, this cancer research is going to impact my profits. Let's call this journal and make sure that this particular idea doesn't get out into the mainstream public.
Okay, because when I looked up the bottle of the blue scorpion venom, that's $825 if you buy it online, and I was just looking at that as like, well, if the average citizen would know about this, know about the venom from this particular insect, and I want to know, and it seems though that because of that, it's devaluing um is devaluing the knowledge of the patient, because I think the patient should know that there is something that could remedy you know their prognosis in that disease. And I think it's criminal, if you ask me, that the FDA and whatever agency is blocking and destroying other people's health. So, and, I think that should be investigated by all sectors of society. Um, that's so that
That's
that
what
that
the
that's
nice thing about
yeah.
that's what the
Go
nice
ahead.
thing about hiring a libertarian is, especially someone like myself who's has a science background.
Right,
I can look at both viewpoints, the left and the right, and really make an educated decision. And so when you think about like drugs, like the opioid crisis, and how there was an incentivization for doctors to prescribe opioids, right?
right.
Pharmaceutical companies are going to go right down that pipeline and say, hey, disregard this new idea that can help out this cancer research. Choose our drug. And so when you think about a lot of those smaller ideas that never hit the mainstream market, it's really big pharma pushing those ideas down, and it really hinders progress. They're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on their ideas, and they don't want to hear any other ideas.
Hmm. Okay. And we still on the healthcare thing. So on one of your things, you said you aim to reduce healthcare costs to $3,000 annually versus the current system that costs families 10,000 or more yearly. So what healthcare plan do you have right now that would reduce $7,000 at least for the average American family?
The libertarian platform clearly states that the free market needs to work. And so when you think about big government, they're not going to, the Libertarian Party will not allow any investment into community resources like free healthcare. And so
Hmm.
when you think about the free market competition, that's where you're going to get most of your reduction. A lot of what we see as far as charity work within healthcare, it's a libertarian belief that companies are going to step up, hospitals that are for profit are going to step up, and they're going to help out the community. But under the libertarian policy and platform, if you go to the doctor, they could literally turn you away. And so when we think about this idea about healthcare, in my opinion, it's going to be a free market system. But one of the ways we do it is we streamline and we make it more efficient. And there's plenty of ways to do that. But we have to be careful on how we spread wealth, because we don't want somebody to pay more while someone pays less. And so we have
Right.
to really think about how we invest in healthcare and what it looks like. I do a lot of process engineering, and so I want to make sure that we're efficient, as effective as possible. There's a couple ideas that are floating around, whether or not we can have like one system of just a payment system where it's payment processing system and we can come up with billing, versus having individual companies spread around and take care of billing and those sorts of logistics. One of the issues you're going to have is communication errors. And that
Hmm.
usually accounts for about 30% of healthcare costs. And so if we could figure out how to make this process better, I think you can reduce costs significantly. But we really have to think about how we want to cure disease. Can we cure HIV quickly? I think we can. Can we cure cancer? I think we can, but we just need to focus on it. Presidents had these ideas about, oh, let's make this a priority, and it just never happened. I think when I was starting college and there was supposed to be a big push in research in biochemistry, I got a
Hmm.
degree in biochemistry, and I heard the call of action, and it just never turned. It's never turned fruition. So it's kind of scary to think about healthcare in the future and where we're headed, and the cost itself. But it's something that we're going to have to work on.
Okay. Okay. Moving on to education, right? And um, now I don't know if you're familiar. I think this was on Gov. I think there's a website. I can't think on top of my head where like okay, I'm in Texas, right? And I believe though education is should be the gateway out of poverty and a gateway out of crime. And most of your prison inmates, or most of your inmates in the United States, are usually in the what we would call the old Confederate states. And one thing I noticed is that I'm using my home state of Texas, right, where we spent 4K for um, a K to 12 student, where we spent at least 5K, no, not 5K, 50K, 50 to 70K on prison inmates. And do you believe, though, that there is a disparity between this school to prison pipeline, um, when it comes to the education and the criminal justice system in this country, because we're the most we call ourselves a um, we are a global superpower, a a more a developed society, and we still have the most people who are in prison, and that I see that as an embarrassment, you know, in that regard. So what is your opinion on the school to prison pipeline? Does it exist? Does it exist? Um, and there's the racial disparities within that in itself. What say you? What's your opinion on that, sir?
Yes, libertarians do believe in a school choice. And so a lot of Republicans believe in school choice. A lot of Democrats do want that typical educational institution. And so there's always going to be that debate. When you hire someone like myself to be president of the United States as a libertarian, I'm going to fix that problem, and it's going to happen within the first 100 days. Scouts honor promise. It's going to happen, right? And so when you think of school to prison pipeline, step one is school choice. If the school's not performing for your child, you put your kid where you think that it suits best for your child, and you get the education that you want, right? And so if schools are failing, then you need to make some changes. And that's just how it is. But libertarians believe in the abolishment of law enforcement, and so that's going to be scary. One of the biggest topics in any political debate is safety. And I'm going to tell everyone that's listening right now, when you think about police alternatives, it's really about abolishing the municipal police department, the sheriff's department, and really focusing law enforcement at the state level. You don't want a mayor controlling a police department. You also don't want, the prison to not have prisoners, and the staff's going, well, I'm going to lose my job because there's no prisoners, right? And so they need to go out and harass the local public. And so one of the big things about school itself, I worked on the task force in my county school district, and I identified it quickly. They call it threat assessments. And so Jefferson County has these ideas where you can take a kid, put them on a threat assessment profile, and you hear things like, we need to connect this with law enforcement, right? Red flag immediately. Like, these kids need to be protected 100%. Law enforcement does not need to be involved. And so when you think about education itself, you can have alternatives. You could do hybrid models where kids can, have school online. And so you have kids that live in poverty that might move school to school. Their performance is going to be low. So if you can have state programs where they can stay in school, be in a classroom, and it's virtual, that's a plus. You think about kids that have parents that migrate, farm worker kids, they're Latinx, they're going to pop up in school, and then they're going to, moving on to the next state or whatever happens, especially if you live in poverty, you're going to be, oh, they rent, your rent's hiked up, now you have to move. And so school performance is terrible. And so these ideas of systematic achievement gaps with Latinx kids, you look at standardized testing, these kids score in the 30 percentile historically. And so you have standardized testing that's supposed to point at these issues, saying, hey, it's been over a decade. We need to find ways to fix this. I'm an expert in these kind of topics. I'm going to fix this immediately.
Do you got any concrete plans? Is there a set agenda or a white paper to to deal with that ready at hand if you should you uh, move into the White House?
It's going to be a complex issue, right?
Right.
Right now, Gen Z's, the leading cause of death is suicide, followed by youth gun violence. And so when you think about topics of how we need to fix education, it's pretty extensive. When you think about our birth rates right now, birth rates are low. And so 60% of everyone's community are going to be retired. So when you think about the next generation and what's necessary for them, to get ready for. We're gonna have, the generation before me said computers are important, right? And
Hmm.
so I was learning computers as a young age, and so now we're working with quantum computers, sensors. We have things called algorithms, right? Artificial intelligence. And so this next generation needs to really focus on computer programming, those sorts of things. And so when we think about how to get ready for the future, it's a lot. It's not just some small task. It's pretty complex.
Okay. Okay. Um, I'm gonna move and 'cause, yeah. Okay. And moving on to I want to talk about um, the environment. Now, there's this debate about uh, whether climate change is man-made or is it not man-made. Um, what is your plan on when it comes to the energy um, in this society in America? What would be your energy um, platform to address the remedies
Yep.
in our sector?
At the university, I was invited to a climate change forum, and so I spoke, and I addressed, the young people that participated, those sorts of things. And so when you think about issues like the Green New Deal, those sorts of things, it's a huge topic, and so there's a lot of time that has to be spent into understanding it, so you can understand both sides. As a libertarian and someone that's educated, and I understand both sides, and so I'm not going to just lean left or lean right, right? I'm going to
Right.
understand it in a way where it's data driven. And so right now there's 8 billion people in the world. And so in a couple of years it's going to be 10 billion. And so there's going to be climate change issues related to migration. Countries are going to have lack of resources. Um, some areas, for example, the Philippines, there was a tsunami. It displaced 5 million people in one day. And so those sorts of issues are going to happen. And so, how does it impact the United States? It's going to impact our border immediately. But we have to really figure out our approach to energy. Is it going to be solar panel? Is it going to be, the electric car? Are we going to really do nuclear? Those sorts of things. Or are we going to continue with fossil fuels?
Hmm.
In 10 more years, we could literally deplete all fossil fuels. So even if we want to keep it going and say that this is important, and the Democrats are making stuff up. Regardless, it's a finite resource. It's gone. And when you think about lithium for car batteries, in a decade we can consume all the lithium on planet Earth, and now we don't have batteries for cars. So modes of
Right.
transportation are going to be at issue. Housing is another concern. If the whole population is 60% retired and the next generation is not getting trained to build houses, housing prices are going to go up, which is happening now. Education could be a huge issue. As we spoke previously, um, the birth rate is being filled by Latinx by a margin of 60%. If those kids score in the 30 percentile in education, are they really ready to be doctors and lawyers, firefighters, service workers that are going to help grow our communities? No. And so in the future, those ideas are so important to me that I'm running for president of the United States, and I want to fix these issues immediately. I get upset quite often when I hear ideas from the left and the right, and that's why I'm a libertarian. I want to push forward with unity, and I want to do it as fast as possible. I'm a millennial, and I don't like to mess around, and I like to just move very fast.
Okay. Okay. So, and you said you about unity. So, and on the diversity and justice, you talked about um how like your uh, when you talk about how some people are not being treated, how would you bring unity when I'm African American, by the way, I'm black. So um how would you bring that unity when there's a heightened tension, a racial animosity um, between certain groups within our society. Whereas you got, we already talked about the police brutality, um, and all that. Oh, wait a minute, I forgot to ask you one more thing. I don't know if you're familiar with Jordan Harris, who is a state representative out of Pennsylvania. He did the what's it called, the clean slate law. Would you do something similar to that when it comes to prison inmates who of non-violent offenders? Would you on a national level have a clean slate law?
Libertarians believe in the abolishment of law enforcement, and so just again for those viewers, I'm going to make
Mm-hmm.
every step necessary possible to keep you safe. It's something that is important to me, and when you think about prisons, a lot of these people don't need to be locked up. It just doesn't need to happen. And so when you think about, getting a ticket, right? You're driving your car, you get a ticket, you're speeding. But in my opinion, we need to figure out how to prevent that ticket from even occurring. And so things like self-driving cars would totally prevent that. And so when you think about getting pulled over because maybe there's a smell of marijuana or cannabis, right?
Right.
Well, libertarian viewpoint is to make all drugs legal. And so now we're slowly taking away that power and giving it back to the people. So my answer to your question is absolutely yes. Everyone needs to come out of prison. They need to go back to work. They need to go reunited to their families, and we need to do it immediately. And so that's my motivation. We
Mm-hmm.
can't sit here and fight each other, kill each other, say that you're a bad person because of your own personal viewpoints. What you do to your body and what you consume is your choice. That's your constitutional right. No one should ever have that judgment on you. And so when you think about people in prison, a lot of what's going on are politicians saying, hey, this is bad, let's run on this campaign idea. And so now we're tough on crime, we're tough on drugs. And so now you have people that are locked up for cannabis. Absolutely ridiculous. It needs to end, and it needs to end now. And so when you think about the left and the right, libertarian is it's the only viewpoint that people should really consider.
Okay. Okay. So moving on to, because because you mentioned the border and how people are, migrants moving the border. Um, what do you think is driving? Well, I'm gonna say what I think is driving the immigrants, the migrants, to move legally and illegally coming up over here. I think though our government, um, through the NSC, it was NSA, I think, and the CIA, I think, because most of those people who crossing the border are Venezuelans. From what I see from the police reports down here in Texas, it seems because ever since we keep going into places like Colombia, Venezuela, we send our foreign agents down there, disrupting their economy and their social structure, that they have no other choice but to come up here. What do you think? Would like you agree that is the assessment of the root of the problem? Why we got this quote unquote border issue?
I think there's natural born leaders in every country. And so a lot of that can be easily suppressed, right? I've seen
Hmm.
it during the Black Lives Matter protests. There's a big debate about the authenticity of Black Lives Matter, but the point is, there were very prominent, young, up and coming activists that I followed intensely. I was in Colorado. The protest lasted 11 days. I was down there every day, all night, very intense. Um, a post-traumatic stress syndrome with the amount of police response, tear gas, getting pepperballed, flashbangs, ridiculous. And so that mayor in particularly suppressed that activist and said follow this particular person. And you know what happened? The authenticity of that activists was completely demolished. And so right now, Iran, straight up, there are activists right now up and coming that can literally change Iran in a positive way, right? More democratic, more freedom. But guess who's going to be involved? The CIA is going to go, hey, we don't want that person. We want this person, right?
Uh-huh.
And so it gets disrupted and it gets foiled. And you know what ends up happening?
What happened?
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. Nothing happens.
Okay. And
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 so
and
that's a bad thing for other countries right now.
right, right. And I also noticed, speaking of Black Lives Matter, we had a woman, a lady by the name of Sasha Johnson. I don't know if you're familiar with Sasha Johnson in the UK. Um, she was shot in the head. I think that last year, but she's still alive. I don't know. There's no updates about her condition of health. I'm assuming she's still alive because I've been trying every month or so. I try to type in, see of her condition, and
For
I
an
guess
update, yeah.
though, huh, sir?
You're trying to get an update.
I'm trying to get an update on Dr. Johnson and Black Lives Matter, and even though I mean, every month or so, I try to see an update and about her and her condition, even though she was shot in the head at I think it was a party, and I found that that was kind of weird. I think so. She had created a new political party in Britain, um, and she's no longer
Mm-hmm.
well. I guess she's no longer part of the movement because she's been silenced. Well, not permanently silenced, but not she's not able to get around to do anything now. So yeah, I've been noticing a little bit here and there on certain things. Um, speaking about racial tensions, what is your opinion? Because on social media, especially in African American parts of social media, there's this campaign in some sectors of reparations. What is your opinion on that? Um, as a libertarian, I'm assuming you are against it. I have some reservations about that myself. So what is your opinion on that certain movement?
Reparations are closely aligned with the Green New Deal.
Uh-huh.
And so taking money specifically from, a citizen and giving it to somebody else, that could be hard.
Right.
But I think that if we can identify ancestral slaves, right, and
Hmm.
and have that reparations, I think it's a good thing. And so
Okay.
going a step further, we have Native Americans, right, indigenous people that we signed treaties with a long time ago that the United States is not abiding by. And so there's lands that United States citizens that are living on that was not land that was owned by United States. It was basically taken, false
Mm.
promises. And so when you look at African Americans in particular, especially with the current President Biden, he spent more time focusing on Asians and not really addressing the issues with African Americans in the same way. And so
Oh,
there's this huge debate that I've been speaking with constituents about, you know, African Americans are overlooked constantly. And so uh, it's going to be a tricky situation. I'm not against it at all, and it's just a personal viewpoint. How we do it, that's going to be interesting. Could it be a piece of land and a house, right? Generational wealth is transferred through people's houses, passed on from generation to generation. But what's that number? Is it 250,000? Is it 500,000? Is it 1.1 million? Those sorts of things. And where
hmm.
where do we get that money?
Right, right. Like for me, I think the only avenue for this to work is to because the Freedmen's Bureau is still on the books. I mean, if you go back to the 1860s and 70s, where Abraham Lincoln and then Grant was advocating for the Freedmen's Bureau, and the Freedmen's Bureau has been defunded in order to fight, quote unquote, to fight Geronimo and the native tribes in the upper in the Dakotas. That was the reason why they defunded the Freedmen's Bureau order in order to fight the indigenous tribes in the northern part of the United States. I find that kind of funny. But do you think though if they would have put money back into the Freedmen's Bureau itself would trickle down to the descendants of the people of those that Freedmen's Bureau was originally was created for? For
I
like for
think,
me,
yeah.
like for me, I think though that would be the
I
best option. So you would agree with that? What you're saying?
Yes, I would agree with that. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
It's one of those things that I've been concerned about for a long time.
Hmm.
Libertarians might not have that same viewpoint. It's a very liberal idea, even borderlines on socialism, right? And
Right.
so a lot of people get scared about those ideas. But guess what? We spend so much money and so much time. We need to make it right. We just have to. We can't just scapegoat all these issues. The United States government has ruined everything they touched. They're so irresponsible with lands, um, plutonium contamination on properties. It's just absolutely ridiculous what the United States government has done and allowed in our previous history. And so we have to go back in our past and fix all those issues um, before we can even really move forward at one point. And so a lot of people say, let's just forget about the past, right?
Right.
We can't. We can't just forget about the past.
Not when like in Texas we still have the land grants uh that we took land from the people who are Hispanic, the Hispanic Americans who are in Texas and
Mm.
New Mexico. We took land from, and we just gave it to somebody else, and people who are living in poverty, who are Hispanic in New Mexico and Texas. And us African Americans who are here, we got things taken away from us, and then they gave it to somebody else, or gave it to a corporation, or to some other entity. I think though, if we want to, well, my opinion is if we want to liberate poverty, I think those people or the descendants of those people should at least get a cut out of what was taken. Um, I think that is justice. I mean, if something was taken away from you, you should get some of it back in return. Um, so
Yeah, if
that
not the property back, right?
right, right. Um, oh, and speaking about taxes, right? Since what is your opinion on the income tax? Should we go to a more of a Jordanian, not what was it, Georgian tax? I did a land tax. What type of tax system that you would like to create, or us to transition to from the income tax?
Yeah, I think it's something ridiculous. Like the amount of money that we spend is equivalent to about 22,000 per individual person. And so
Hmm.
when you think about how much the government is spending, they need to go out and try to recoup 22,000 from each individual person. Um, I don't know about you, but I have a family. I can't have the government come into my bank account or tax my paychecks to equivalent of 22,000 a year. That's significant. And so I think one way we fix those sorts of issue is we start removing government agencies, right? Do we really want the FBI? It was created for a purpose, and that purpose was served, and so now it's gone. Do we really need the DEA? We're going to legalize, um, you know, medicinal and recreational drugs, right? You have a Second Amendment right to own, a firearm. Do we need a DEA? And so when you start looking at these agencies and figuring out the necessity of them, no, big government needs to just go away. And so libertarian viewpoint is quite simply no taxes. It's a very conservative viewpoint as well. A lot of Republicans believe that. But the major thing is millennials in particular, they shop at businesses that give back to the community, that have some component of charity. And so a lot of these companies need to step up. And so a lot of that will just be filled by the free market and charitable donations and, those sorts of things. And so the government really doesn't need to be involved in, your paycheck. This
Okay.
constitutionally, the states have individual rights, and so that's going to be a topic to discuss locally with your state, right? State taxes. I know Florida, they don't have state taxes, and so you can just go shop and have fun and not have to worry about state taxes. That's a great thing. In Colorado, I paid $1,800 for my state taxes, and I have kids, and so can you imagine if you're a single person, it's probably a lot.
Yeah, probably is. Yeah, because if you take that with income with the federal income tax, you're paying half of your paycheck if you're a single person, and then if you're in your state, you pay $800. That's still, you know, whatever I get or a single person will get that to pay that uh, refund to pay out the state tax. I mean, I used to have a friend that used to do that. He used to take the refund that the federal government take and pay his property tax, his state tax. That. Yeah. I mean, he said, is that free? No, he said, well, I don't call that a I don't call that uh, a refund. I call that uh, he called it re robbery, quote unquote. He used to, you know,
It's highway robbery, right? Yeah.
right,
They try to
right.
get you every single way. Like you have to get married, you have to buy a license piece of paper, right? The
Mhm.
government really shouldn't have an opinion on who you marry or how you marry, or it's a law, those sorts of things. And so a lot of that needs to go away. The Libertarian Party believes in my opinion, my viewpoint is unity. And so one way to do that is to end war completely. And so we're bringing those military folks home. And so when you think about that huge expense that we're doing with the CIA, those sorts of agencies you spoke about, and the interference, we're spending trillions of dollars, and we're basically bankrupting the next generation. So Gen Zers, if you're listening, I really do feel sorry. We need to fix this immediately.
Okay. Um, Speaking about that, speaking that was going to be my last question. I was going to ask about foreign policy, and when it comes to no, what's in the headlines now is the issue with the Ukraine and Russia and the possibility of NATO expansion towards the east. Um, what do you got any idea or any plan or manifesto that would call for a peace plan that was called for a peace treaty between the Ukrainian and the Russian government? Do you have any ideas on what type of ideas you put
Yeah,
forward on that?
yeah. The Libertarian Party, their policy is free trade, right? And
Right.
so countries like Belize, we don't trade with. Um, there's no trade, and so as a libertarian, we're going to open up those borders and open up the market. Free market is so important for both sides. And so one of the things that I hope is we can basically say the whole world, let's unite. Let's actually move towards peace. I'm going to do the first step. I'm going to dismantle nuclear weapons. I'm bringing my military home. So when you think about countries like Iran, this tit for tat, it's constantly back and forth. You look at Ukraine, we sent killer those drones that you fly and you can fly them into people and blow that individual person up, the kamikaze
Mhm.
drones.
Yes.
Guess what? Iran created their own version. Who started that tit for tat? That idea the United States did. Now Russia has killer drones. That's dangerous. So
Right.
every time you introduce new technology, what's going to happen? Another 9/11? So there's gonna be collateral damage. And so once you escalate and continue to escalate, it's a proxy war for the United States. We're just using Ukraine in a proxy war. $1.5 trillion going to Ukraine, that is a huge number. And that's exactly how much money they need. We're sending weapons, the whole nine. You know, South Korea, you know what weapons they sent? Non-lethal weapons. Oh, we'll provide weapons, but they're going to be non-lethal. And so when you think about protecting your civilian population, does it really need to be these crazy weapons? No, it doesn't. We don't need to sit here and create weapons. We can create things that actually can just do its job. When you look at San Francisco, that police
Hmm.
department wanted a robot that can literally go in and assassinate a person without any due diligence or justice whatsoever. And
Right,
so
right.
why not create a drone that can just tase, right? Why does it have to be lethal? It could be non-lethal. Why are we creating these weapons that just totally kill, right? And so we need to come up with a different idea. And so I think the United States can be the leader in world peace.
Right, and I agree with you. So what is your idea on space? SpaceX. We send people. They're going to send a person around on the moon again in 2024. Um, what is your space policy? How would you use space to benefit the American people and the world itself? How would you? What is the libertarian view or your view when it comes to outer space and space policy?
Yeah, I think this can only be answered by scientists like myself. Republicans don't have any ideas about it. Libertarians don't have any ideas about it. Socialists don't have any ideas about it. Democrats don't have any ideas about it. But quite frankly, it needs to happen. When you look at Blue Origin's concept of like a public space station, they're
Hmm.
allowing companies to go into a space station that they want to build, and so you can create experiments, you can do what you need to do in a space environment that can benefit mankind. And so one of their goals is to mine the moon. And so the moon right now is suspected of having hydrogen. And so when you
You
think
talk,
about these super fuels,
you talking about things like helium three and hydrogen
helium
three
3,
isotopes. Yes, the use for power plants.
yeah,
So I'm.
yeah, a hydrogen, protonated hydrogen has an extra proton, and so it
Hmm.
is helium, but they do call it liquid hydrogen. And so a lot of the rockets that Blue Origin is creating are hydrogen based. Toyota's doing hydrogen based cars. Uh, we have other companies that are building rocket engines that would go into commercial airlines that are using hydrogen. The moon is filled with this super fuel, and so we need to create these opportunities where we can create a space station. Now we can mine the moon, and now we have this resource to send back to our own, our own world. When you think about finite fuels like lithium for batteries in cars, natural gas, oil, Teslas can just be, unusable because now we don't have batteries, right?
Right,
Within 10 by 2050, there's no lithium. And so even if we switch from oil to electric, by 2050, we can't use both, right? So that's
right,
scary. What are we
right.
going to do in the meantime? And so you can't ask a Democrat that, or a Libertarian, or a Democrat. You can only really ask somebody who understands science. And so when you think about moving forward and what's necessary, hiring someone like myself to be president of the United States is quite important. And a lot of these topics, I thank you for having me today, are so important because no one's really talking about it.
Right. The only thing I'm hearing is identity politics, fear mongering, Trumpism, wokeism, any type of ism that there is, and there's no vision that I see. I believe that we hadn't had vision since the '60s. That's what I think, in my opinion. So anyway, that's all I got. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Rodriguez, and forgive me for being somewhat nervous and everything. So I would like to have you on next time if if there is a, I would like, because you're not the first candidate that I had on here, so I would like to at least have like a forum or a debate um, between presidential candidates in the future. Would you like to be a part of that? If I have that, like I'm trying to get all these eggs in a row before the 2024 arrives. So.
Yeah, I've set up in the past Senate debates, and so I've worked with many candidates, and so it's so important to have these discussions, and it's not necessarily a debate, a forum, just really having a voice and opinions, and so viewers can have like this open, discussion and ideas, and so
Right.
I applaud you, and so. I'm glad that you have me, and absolutely yes. We can work together and make that happen for sure.
Okay. Okay then. Good, good deal. So yeah, I'm gonna try to set that up because I got other people I'm trying to get on. One person already says she wants to. I talked to her about 2 months ago. She said she wants to be a part of it. I mean of me
Awesome.
interviewing and then have her. And I was going to ask her the same thing. She's interested in a round table or discussion uh, panel or something like
Yep.
that. Anyway, sir, I appreciate it, and thank you for dropping by, Mr. Rodriguez. I wish you the best of luck. So,
Yep. Thanks, BJ. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
yes, sir. Like, share, subscribe. I'm gonna put this up uh, probably middle of next week because I gotta do opening and closing and all that. So anyway, thank you for having me on, sir. I mean, thank you for dropping by, sir. So anyway, I'm out of here and peace, y'all.
Oh,
And
you're welcome.
all right then, I'm out, y'all. Peace.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.